Hey guys, Edward here from Edward279, the mixed content creator. Europe. For its size, it's really densely populated, but some cities have a lot more people than others. So in today's video, we'll be talking about the top 10 most populated cities in Europe. So without further ado, let's get to the list. First up on this list is the Austrian capital, Vienna, a city that's both greener and cleaner than some other cities on this list like London and Paris. Vienna is also a cultural hotspot, with the city even being called the City of Music, and rightfully so. Historically, back during the Habsburgs' rule in Austria, Vienna was a thriving capital with a perfect environment for musicians and artists to write music that would last throughout the ages, giving Austria's capital a reputation as one of Europe's music hotspots. Not only that, but the city also goes by the name the City of Dreams, because the city was home to the first psychoanalyst, Sigmund Freud. And with the vibrant culture scene combined with cleanliness and overall great living, it's no surprise that Vienna was ranked as the world's second most livable city, just behind Melbourne in Australia, by the Economist Intelligence Unit. The vibrant capital of Austria is the 10th most populous city in Europe, with Vienna's population being around 2 million. Often referred to as the City of Love due to its romantic image and common used as a backdrop in romantic films, books, and other media, Paris proudly held the title as the most visited city in the world. Well, up until it was stolen by Bangkok, Thailand. But even with that loss, France as a whole still holds the title as the world's most visited country, which I talked about in further detail in my top 10 most visited countries video. Link in the description. But Paris doesn't just go by the nickname the City of Love. It's also sometimes referred to as the City of Lights. It's due either to it being among Europe's first cities to start using gas lamps, or due to Paris being a major hub of the ideas and ideologies that would fuel the Enlightenment. And even crazier, you can actually find Roman ruins in Paris, as the modern location of the city was once part of the Roman region of Gaul, which encompassed France, Luxembourg, and Belgium, as well as parts of the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. Paris is Europe's 9th most populated city, with the Romance-associated city being home to a population of roughly 2.1 million. Having historically been the flourishing imperial capital of a mighty empire that dominated the Mediterranean, Rome is no stranger to being densely packed, with Rome having actually been the world's very first city to have a population of over 1 million people. And even today, Italy's capital is not just incredibly populated with residents, but also so popular with international tourists, even though the city doesn't get nearly as much tourism as some others like Venice, Barcelona, and Santorini. And although most structures from the days of ancient Rome didn't survive the test of time intact, one amazingly actually did survive in pristine condition into the present day: the Pantheon. Not to be confused with the Parthenon in Greece, the Pantheon in Rome is the only ancient building to remain intact into the present day, and is widely considered the best preserved building from the ancient world. Archaeological sites turned tourist attractions aside, Rome holds the title as Europe's 8th most populous city, with a population numbering around 2.74 million people. One of, if not the only city on this list that is a population hub but not a major tourist attraction, the Ukrainian capital Kyiv was not very well known, up until that, invasion by Russia and annexation of Crimea and the Donbass. But boy, is there a lot to know about it. Like that Kyiv is actually one of the oldest cities in Eastern Europe, having been founded around the 5th century CE and having a history going back over for 1,400 years. The city also goes by the nickname the City of Golden Domes, due to the abundance of churches and cathedrals topped with golden domes, some of which, like the St. Sophia's Cathedral, are actually UNESCO World Heritage sites due to their beautiful architecture and religious significance. And even though Kiev is the capital of Ukraine today, it was once the capital of the Kievan Rus, which eventually led to not just modern Ukraine, but also its not-so-friendly neighbors, Russia and Belarus. Kiev is ranked as the 7th most populated city in Europe, with the city being home to a population of roughly 2.95 million people. As the thriving Spanish capital with a lot to offer for locals and tourists alike, Madrid has actually held the title as the capital of Spain for a long time, as the city has been Spain's capital since the 17th century, officially replacing nearby Toledo as the Spanish capital back in the year 1560. And even stranger, it wasn't even the European Spaniards that founded the city, as Madrid was actually established by the Arabs, specifically by Emir Muhammad, who established Madrid, which was then called Mayrit, as part of a chain of military settlements to defend the Islamic Empire's northern border from the Christian kingdoms in other areas of Europe in 865 CE. Even still, the Arabs were eventually kicked out of Spain during the Reconquista. But even with the Muslims out, the city continued to thrive and is today one of Europe's population hotspots, as Madrid is the 6th most populous city in Europe, with a population of 3.33 million people. Often considered the least German city in Germany, the German capital Berlin has lots of international influence, as Berlin is a crazy popular destination with expats. But what's really crazy is that the city is actually even older than the nation of Germany itself, as the city of Berlin was founded back in 1237, while the unification of Germany into a single nation didn't take place until 1871, which means that, if you do the math, Berlin is a whopping 634 years older than unified Germany. But that's not the only thing this strange German city has to offer. For example, it's actually home to more museums than there are rainy days in the city, as Berlin has 180 museums, while only getting roughly 106 rainy days annually. And even though Bavaria, more specifically Munich, is often associated with beer, Berlin packs a punch too, with the German capital while actually being home to the world's longest beer garden, and having a solid 1,000 late-night stores to get cheap beer at all hours. Berlin is Europe's 5th most populated city, with the not terribly German capital of Germany having a population of 3.75 million people. As the then capital of and 2nd largest city in Russia, St. Petersburg was actually known as Petrograd for a while. Because the name St. Petersburg sounded too German, because remember, the renaming of the city took place during World War I, when Russia's main enemy was, you guessed it, the Germans. But it was actually renamed a second time to Leningrad after the death of Vladimir Lenin, and finally a third time back to St. Petersburg in 1991. This means the city was renamed not once, not twice, but thrice. But that's not the only thing this culture capital of Russia has to offer. For example, did you know that the St. Petersburg subway is actually one of the world's deepest, with the deepest station, Admiraltskaya, or however you're supposed to pronounce that, being 86 meters underground, or 282 feet for you Americans watching. The only subway stations that are deeper are in Kyiv in Ukraine and North Korea, where they were intentionally made so deep in case of war. The cultural capital of Russia is also Europe's fourth most populous city, with a population of around 5.6 million people. Technically the capital of two countries instead of just one, London is technically the capital of both the UK and England, a constituent country in the UK alongside Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. As far as the famous Big Ben clock tower goes, you might be surprised to know that Big Ben isn't actually the real name, with the tower's actual name having been St. Stephen's Tower up until 2012, when it was renamed to Elizabeth Tower on the occasion of Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee. And if you've ever watched my top 10 largest economies, or whatever it's called, video, link is also in the description, you probably know that London is one of the world's biggest financial hubs, right up there with New York City across the pond in the US. Yes, which is in something I like to call an quote-unquote economic arms race with London for the title of the world's biggest financial hub. Sometimes it's London and sometimes it's NYC, so neither holds the title for terribly long against the other. London is the third most populous city in Europe, with London being home to a population roughly 8.92 million people strong. The current capital of Russia that replaced St. Petersburg in 1918, Moscow, actually has a few things that are strange up its sleeve that you might not expect at first glance. Like that the famous, or should I say infamous after the invasion of Ukraine, Kremlin in Moscow wasn't always red. It was actually white when it was first built, but only in the 19th century was the color changed to red. And even crazier, the dead body of Vladimir Lenin is actually preserved in a mausoleum in the city's red space, with keeping his corpse in mint condition actually costing the Russian Federation roughly, get this, 13 million rubles annually. That's 210,000 US dollars or 155,000 euros spent annually just to keep Lenin's dead body looking natural. On a not as gross but equally strange note, only about 2% of the Russian capital's population is actually quote-unquote from Moscow, with the vast majority being either they're immigrants or coming from other Russian cities. Even so, Moscow takes the title as Europe's second most populous city, with the capital of Russia being home to roughly 13.15 million people. But before we get to the number one most populated city in Europe, here are some honorable mentions. Minsk, Belarus, 1.99 million people. Hamburg, Germany, 1.89 million people. Warsaw, Poland, 1.86 million people. Bucharest, Romania, 1.74 million people. Belgrade, Serbia, 1.68 million people. And now, finally, we come to Istanbul in Turkey. And while I generally consider Turkey to be in Asia and not Europe, Istanbul is technically in both continents. But for this list's sake, I'm counting it as a European city. And get this, Istanbul is the only transcontinental city in the entire world. Yes, no other city on Earth is split between two continents, with Istanbul being split into European and Asian parts by the Bosphorus Strait. And which continent you're on depends on which side of the strait you're on. If you're on the western side, you're in Europe. If you're on the eastern side, you're in Asia. And although it was the historic capital of three empires, the Eastern Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires, Istanbul is actually not the modern Turkish capital. No, that honor goes to Ankara, which replaced Istanbul as the capital in 1930 after the formation of the Republic of Turkey. Istanbul is technically Europe's most populated city, with the not Turkish capital having a population numbering around 15.65 million people. So there you have it, the top 10 most populated cities in Europe. We hope you enjoyed this video. As always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!